The monster is coming to terms with his growing sense of humanity, but he longs for more as his parasymbiotic relationship with a small family grows. Where will it lead? Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for the 12th part in a read-along series for Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This video will have 3 sections: a So What Happened recap of this portion of the novel, a literary criticism section where we talk about all of the literary merits and goings-on in this chapter, and finally, a writer's corner where we talk about those things we can take from this chapter of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley as writers ourselves. So, what happened? The monster loses sleep thinking about how badly he wants to join the small family. But as he observes them, he comes to realize that the family lives in poverty. So he absolves to graze away from their cottage, but remains at camp there for comfort. He also borrows their tools overnight to collect some of the firewood that they use every day. Over time, he starts clearing the snow from their paths overnight as well. As he notices their appreciation for his good deeds, he fantasizes more and more about being one of them. If he does enough good, he figures, they will be able to see past his appearance and value him. These feelings grow as the spring comes, and the monster feels ready to emerge with language which he has slowly begun to acquire. The first thing I want to talk about here with this chapter is the idea of perspective. Now, you or I might look at the situation that this family is in. The young people are supporting the old man. They don't seem to have any type of education. They don't seem to have many marketable skills. And it's easy to imagine that, look, their future could be just as bleak as that old man's. Their present is, all of them are living in a sort of um, rough situation where there aren't a whole lot of promising prospects for them. There's not a whole lot of good stuff going on outside of the house for them. They are unlikely to know much leisure in their entire lives. They are likely to be born in a place like this and to eventually die in a place very much like they are currently living. Not very good living standards, not a whole lot of leisure or social activity or comfort or comforting foods, things like that. They have to live off of the land, and still, the monster envies them. The monster looks at them and wants what it is that they have. So, this idea of a type of dual perspective here in this story, people are looking at the monster and saying, oh my God, that is terrifying. We don't want that anywhere near us. Even Victor Frankenstein, his creator, looked at him when he was first alivening and ran away, abandoned him. The people in this small cottage that the monster is watching, they refuse to abandon one another. They are sad. They seem to be aware of the bleak nature of their circumstance, but still they stick with one another. So he, the monster, lacks the perspective to value being. He values what they have because they have each other. He is in a very rough situation, the monster is, because he has no one. There's no one there to foster him. There's no one there to teach him. There's no one there to comfort him. There's no comfort at all in these pairs of chapters. He is, the monster, starting to value simply the idea of being alive. Now, he's envious of this family, but he is rising to the occasion that he has found, the ability to provide in the way that he is. Um, and others don't seem to be able to look onto his circumstance, as lowly as they might seem, and be happy for what it is that they have. So the a little bit here in this novel thus far, we have the idea of looking at situations better than yours and wanting that. Looking at situations worse than yours and not wanting that from everywhere except for Victor's parents. Victor's parents were taking in sort of wayward souls. And we have Victor who is refusing to do the same, even when the quote unquote child, the monster, is really his creation. Now, I want to go to a quote on page 113 and 114 of the text that I have. It reads as such: "My thoughts now became more active, and I longed to discover the motives and feelings of these lovely creatures. I was inquisitive to know why Felix appeared so miserable and Agatha so sad. I thought, foolish wretch, that it might be in my power to restore happiness to these deserving people. When I slept or was absent, the forms of the venerable blind father, the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix flitted before me. I looked upon them as superior beings who would be the arbiters of my future destiny. I formed in my imagination 1,000 pictures of presenting myself to them and their reception of me. I imagined that they would be disgusted until, by my gentle demeanor and conciliating words, I should first win their favor and afterwards their love." This is the monster caring. The monster is growing in his humanity. This is a person now. Is this human nature? Is caring human nature? Is that what it means to be human, to care for someone else? Is that what it means to care? Is that what is being human defined by your ability to care for people? You look around the animal kingdom, and surely that is not the case. Dogs seem to be very favorable of people. Some cats do. Most cats don't. Other animals seem to develop bonds with people. So, is this the monster developing humanity? How do you define humanity? How do you say what it is to be human? I don't know that humanity is what it is that's being developed here. And that's hard, isn't it? Because he's able to put it into words the way that he is. He is able to describe what it is that he's feeling. He's able to pass on the knowledge that he has gained along the way. That is certainly him growing in his consciousness. But is it him growing as a human? It's one of those things that I think is interesting to talk about because you hear it in words, and I think you're tempted to say, yes, that is what it means to be human. I don't, however, know that it is a good definition of what it is to be human. So, for example, I've told this story on the channel before. I used to have a friend who I would pose questions such as, what is art? And she would say, well, it's whatever draws out emotion. Now, she was the very artsy fartsy type. She was not into sports at all. So I sort of brought the point up. Look, Jamal Charles, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, really gets the emotions going when you watch him break off an 84-yard touchdown run. Is that art? I knew she would say no, but then she was not either willing or capable to provide more of a definition of what art is. So I think we can have bad definitions of something that end up being intuitive on one hand, but completely useless on the other, right? So is humanity caring about people? What is humanity in practice? And I don't think that is what we have on display here. The last thing to talk about here, I have questioned in this series before how it is that the monster gets language. And the monster here is telling the story, ironically, of how it is that he began to acquire language. Listening to language and acquiring language, I think, is a poor explanation. I think it would be infinitely more compelling in this story if what were happening was that the monster was suddenly growing awareness through a brain, reanimated as it is, which was starting to pick up more and more of the memories that it had when it was a human, an active human brain on its first life. So those are the literary criticisms section for this chapter. For the for the writer's corner portion of this, I would like to go back to that paragraph. My thoughts now became more active, and I longed to discover the motives and feelings of these lovely creatures. I was inquisitive to know why Felix appeared so miserable and Agatha so sad. I thought, foolish wretch, that it might be in my power to restore happiness to these deserving people. When I slept or was absent, the forms of the venerable blind father, the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix flitted before me. I looked upon them as superior beings who would be the arbiters of my future destiny. I formed in my imagination 1,000 pictures of presenting myself to them and their reception of me. I imagined that they would be disgusted until, by my gentle demeanor and conciliating words, I should first win their favor, and afterwards their love. Now, this is an emotion that lives somewhere near to something called mono no aware. Now, I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation there, but mono no aware, the pathos of things. Mono no aware is a Japanese aesthetic and philosophical concept that expresses a deep, melancholic appreciation for the impermanence of things. It is often translated as the pathos of things or an awareness of the fleeting nature of life, evoking both beauty and sadness in transience. Now, this isn't exactly where this paragraph is, but I think that if you were willing to take into the larger context the fact that this paragraph is spoken as past tense because the situation is no longer there, but the monster in the paragraph is looking to the future tense. These people might love me. These people might accept me. These people might value those things that I am able to do for them, but it is spoken in the past tense. So the moment that was here is gone. A little bit more on Mono no Aware. Impermanence is beautiful. That's one of the core tenets. That's one of the meanings of it. Everything, life, love, seasons, moments, is temporary. And that very transience makes it more meaningful. Instead of resisting change, one accepts it with a quiet, bittersweet appreciation. Sadness and beauty are intertwined. Sadness isn't negative, it's a deep sensitivity to the passage of time. The awareness that something must fade makes it more precious while it lasts. Western Romanticism often seeks to preserve beauty forever, while Mono no Aware accepts that beauty must fade to be meaningful. Beauty must fade to be meaningful in the first place. This sort of pathos is where a novel like Flowers for Algernon lives. This is where a short story like The Chrysanthemums by John Steinbeck lives. We're getting to John Steinbeck's The Chrysanthemums this month on the channel, by the way. This feeling that is sort of housed in this paragraph, I wonder if it could be spread out into this novel. This sort of how do we incorporate these things as writers, right? If you were to take this feeling, something close to Mono no Aware, and you were to spread it out over the rest of this novel, would that make it stronger or weaker? So with Flowers for Algernon, I think you don't really get the overwhelming sense of Mono no Aware in that novel until that final twist at the end, if you know what that is. Um, I guess I shouldn't ruin it here, but there is a twist towards the end of that novel, something that doesn't necessarily go wrong, but certainly doesn't go right. And at that moment, the rest of the novel becomes an embodiment of Mono no Aware. If something lives there longer than this paragraph, if something lives there more fully than Flowers for Algernon, is that something? So, by the way, flowers, temporary beauty, chrysanthemums, temporary beauty. This thing is not accidental, right? Spreading out that or draping the rest of the novel in that idea, that feeling, that emotion, does that make it become too much? Does it become overpowering at that point to where your novel is just melancholy? I don't know. I haven't read anything that is consistently that way from start to finish. So maybe